last vacation, my father and I decided, very last minute, to visit Tokyo DisneySea, and because this was such a spontaneous decision, I did not do enough research before our visit to the park. But it didn't really matter, because even with a few of the mistakes we made, the day was amazing. We fit in everything we wanted to see, plus a little more, so I figured why not share my experience with some of y'all, since I imagine Twisted Wonderland fans, being fans of a Disney property, probably also enjoy Disney as a whole. Therefore, I'm going to take you through our day, talking about all the things we saw, did, ate, and enjoyed in this little mini vlog, along with a few tips and cautionary tales if you happen to be thinking about visiting this park in the future. Our park day started early because we were staying in Hamamatsucho, which is roughly about an hour away by train from the parks. And one of the few things that I did know about Tokyo Disney and DisneySea is that you gotta be queued up at least like an hour before the park opens if you want any hope of getting timed entry or certain fast passes. Luckily for us, our flex day on this vacation was on like a Tuesday, so we had the benefit of not having to deal with super crazy crowds like on a weekend. But even when we got there, roughly an hour before, there were still so many people queued up in front of the gates. Like, it was a little ridiculous. However, the route that we took was pretty straightforward. Just go to Tokyo Station, then transfer to the Keio line, hop on the Disney monorail, and then hop off at the park gates. The hardest part of the whole journey to get there was figuring out how to get to the Keio line in Tokyo Station because it was a hike from the Yamanote line platform. So my best advice is to follow anyone wearing Mickey ears that looks like they could be local. If you start to see advertisements for Disney and DisneySea, then you're headed in the right direction. And if you see advertisements for Twisted Wonderland, you are almost to the platform. The joy I felt when I saw row after row after row of these giant posters of the Soom Boys was immeasurable. I had ascended, and it was glorious, and it was the only time anything official regarding the game was around that day. The parks themselves do not promote or carry Twist merchandise, so please do not go to them expecting to find a Ville scale figure because that will not happen. Occasionally, one of the restaurants will have a collaborative menu based off the dorms, but as far as I'm aware, that's kind of it regarding Twist. What's much more popular instead at Tokyo Disney is the ears and the hats and all of the limited time merch. Popcorn buckets, etc. All of these things were all over the place. I wanted to get this pair of ears, but they weren't released yet, which then led me to this pair, which was immediately sold out upon entering the park because it was limited edition 25th anniversary merch. And then I didn't get any ears at all because I couldn't decide between all of the standard options that were available. And then I also saw somebody with this Dale hat that I really wanted, but I couldn't find it at any of the places. So I eventually just gave up on the merch hunt and resigned myself to not having any fun accessories while I was at the park. However, it was okay to bat a 0 here because we ended up batting 100 on attractions. To get to these lovely rides, though, you first need to get into the park. And one of the things that I was aware of is that you need to get to the park at least an hour before opening because the queues are massive and you cannot purchase any fast passes or get your timed entry for Fantasy Springs until your ticket has been scanned and you are physically standing in the park. This is different from how the US parks operate, at least to my knowledge, so if you want to guarantee certain passes at Tokyo Disney, you need to be in line early, so that you can get in as fast as possible to then snag those early time slots. During peak season and weekends, you need to be there even earlier because the queues will back up to an insane degree, or so I'm told. But I believe these rumors to be true because when we got to the park an hour early, the queue was already back here. A quick tip for this is to make sure that your card details are saved to the app before you get into the park so that you don't have to awkwardly pull out your credit card and type in the numbers off to the side of the pathway like I did. This validation system made me really nervous about Fantasy Springs, which was not an additional cost, but it was time-gated. From my very limited research, I was cautioned in almost every single video about the limited time slots to get into that area of the park and how those time slots would go immediately. However, to my surprise, when we got in the park, there was no longer a timed entry requirement for Fantasy Springs. Now, I don't know if this is a permanent change or not, because the second surprise we encountered that morning was this banner. Apparently, the park was celebrating its 25th anniversary, the Shining Jubilee, which we did not know about before we got on the property, and it made my dad chuckle because the last time we were at a Disney park, it was the park's 50th anniversary. So we seem to luck out with anniversaries for some reason. But due to this, there was a lot of like limited edition merch, experiences, and minor overlays across the park, which were really cool. After getting my card info sorted and our first premiere access booked, we headed into the harbor and made our way over to Journey to the Center of the Earth. Here we found one of the coolest areas in the park, in my opinion, and it was pretty devoid of people, as almost everyone and their mothers was queuing for soaring, which we skipped on this trip since we have a version of it in the US and I don't think it's exactly the same, but the line was insane all day. The entrance to soaring is here. The line at about 9 o'clock when the park opened was all the way over here. I do not understand the hype, and I am still fine with not understanding, because I was much more excited about our third surprise of the day. The Food and Wine Festival was also happening at the time that we visited, so there was a lot of yummy limited drinks and snack items floating about, a couple of which we got to try. Due to all of the excitement about seeing new things and booking passes, I did not make reservations for any of the sit-down restaurants, because I kind of forgot that's a thing you need to do at Disney. So there were likely more things we could have tried, but we still made out good with the majority of the food that we ate from counter service. After wandering around this steampunk area, it was time for our first ride, Journey to the Center of the Earth. I have none of my own footage of the ride because they kindly requested that you not record or take pictures, so I did not, but it was really fun. I thought it was going to be a coaster type deal, but it was actually a dark ride with zippy moments between areas. At the end of the ride, though, true to the story, you get shot out of the volcano, which is a high-speed coaster moment. This was one of the most unique attractions at the park, in my opinion, and I would highly recommend experiencing it for yourself if you get the chance to go. The environments were gorgeous and chock full of detail. Jade would have absolutely loved the Mushroom Room. At one point, there was even real fire. Since it's one of the more popular attractions, which already had about an hour wait by the time the park opened, it might be worth getting the Premier Pass to maximize your time. We skipped the whole above-ground queue area and got loaded directly onto the elevator, which takes you down to the loading bay. And all for the low price of 1,500 yen per person, or roughly $9.40 USD. This allowed us to use the hour that we would have been waiting here for another attraction elsewhere. I don't know if this is all that cheap in comparison to the US Lightning Lane system, but given that I couldn't even get the stupid Genie app working during our last visit to Disney World, I personally have no gripes with paying a little extra here, especially since I'm not sure I'll ever get the chance to visit the park again. And I personally didn't find the app all that frustrating once the card details were saved. Once we got off the ride, I was able to book another Premier Pass, so I penciled in Tangled since I had heard a lot of good things about this ride and how pretty it was and how amazing the experience was, but it was a couple of hours out. So we headed over to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to cool off, because volcanoes are hot, and the sea typically is not. So under it we went, and if you have submechanophobia, this ride is not for you. Please skip ahead. I had heard through my lackluster research that this ride was terrible and not worth waiting any amount of time for, and I do not know what these people were smoking because I thought it was amazing. Although I've also never been to Disneyland and I had never had the chance to ride in the submarine ride while it was operational in the US, so I may have been influenced by novelty. I don't know how this one compares to what the US used to have, but what I can say is that it is a lovely little dark ride where you are cramped into a tiny submarine and you get to see all sorts of underwater life, including some merfolk. Plus, you have a little light that you can move around and shine on the different parts of the attraction, which I thought was super fun. And we may not have actually been able to control the light, as my father declared later on in the ride, but the lever underneath us lit up at some point and we were getting some sort of instructions. And then when you move the lever, the light moved. So I was stoked. The windows of the submarine are pumped with water to give you the illusion that you are under the sea, and occasionally bubbles will appear, which is a very nice detail. Now, there is an accompanying story in Japanese. However, since I don't know the language and I can only pick up on context clues, like the lever lighting up and then a light appearing in the sea and then the light moving when you touch the lever, I don't really know what was being said. However, I presume it was a commentary on what we were seeing and our submarine's status. The standby line for this was only about 20 minutes at the time that we joined, and it really didn't feel like we waited that long, if I'm being honest. However, later in the day, I think it peaked around 45 minutes, so I'm not sure it's necessarily worth that much time, unless you adore the sea like me. Still, thoroughly excited to have been around anything related to the ocean, we had decided to head over towards Fantasy Springs through the Little Mermaid land because we were planning on making a pit stop at Raging Spirits, since we still had a lot of time before our Tangled time slot, and the coaster didn't seem like it was going to be that outrageous of a wait. Now, I, perhaps shockingly, given that my channel is dedicated to a Disney game, do not really like or care that much about Disney at all, and I especially, perhaps sacrilegiously, couldn't care less about The Little Mermaid. I know, clutch thy pearls in shock. I'll give y'all a minute to collect your thoughts. However, I did think it was going to be interesting to see this land since I had seen some Twist cosplayers on Instagram shooting videos and pictures in this area, and given my intense emotional investment in Octagonelle, I thought I could do a little oshikatsu and take pictures of the Tweels in various places, enjoy the ambiance, and then move along with the day. What I did not expect was to be tearing up at the sight of this castle, not for nostalgia's sake, but because I am way too invested in Octagonelle. I didn't realize that it was this bad, guys. I truly did not. We didn't have time to go under the sea at this point since we had plans to ride that coaster and then pick up a snack before our boat ride, but we really should have gone in because later in the day we entered the land through the wrong entrance. I think technically it's an exit, but you can go either way. It's not that impactful if you go that way. Learn from my mistake and go down by Triton to get the full experience. Do not go down the stairs to get to the gift shop and the cantina. If you were going to get food like we were, just take the extra couple steps to go through Triton. It is much better that way. And since it was not lunchtime yet, we arrived at the Raging Spirits coaster, which was a very cute mini coaster with a loop that was pretty fun, but not nearly fun enough to wait more than an hour. Luckily, this ride had a single rider line, so we only had to wait about 20 minutes or so to get on. Miraculously, Papa and I got on the same exact train. And the guy that I was going to sit next to even said hello to me in English, which was really funny because his friends did not see me and they were like, Nande? Hello? And then once they saw me, they were like, oh, hello. It was a very nice interaction. Once the ride was over, we were feeling a little bit peckish, so we decided to head into Fantasy Springs for a snack at the Snuggly Duckling, since they had these really cute little duck muffins that I really wanted to try. Now, I apparently cannot read and thought that this location also had counter service, which it does not. So you do need to place a mobile order before you can go in, and because of this misunderstanding, I assumed all of the quick service restaurants were mobile order only. So I made a bit of an oopsie with our lunch, but for now, it was muffin time, which I washed down with a Rapunzel-themed milk tea that I drank way too fast because it was so delicious. And Papa Noct only got fries because that's what he wanted, so that's what he got. The theming in there was amazing, but I have no pictures because it was super crowded and I felt awkward taking pictures of things that were right next to people who were eating that I did not know. However, it's certainly worth getting a little muffin if you want to see the inside and or are a big fan of Tangled. I cannot speak to the burgers that they serve because we did not eat them. Since we ate fast and the coaster queue was way quicker than we were anticipating, we decided to go to the Tinkerbell ride to pass the time. This was such a cute little experience from the queue of the ride to the ride itself. The story is essentially as follows. Cheese, the mouse, is celebrating his birthday, and due to this is given the day off. Unfortunately, this means there is no one around that can deliver things to the various fairies who are preparing for their respective seasons. Therefore, it is up to us to make the deliveries on Cheese's behalf by getting into this fancy contraption and going to all the different seasonal areas. The ride was short, sweet, and the little buggy that you're in twists and turns, making an otherwise simplistic track more exciting while giving you the opportunity to view more props and details. Once we finished with that, it was time for Tangled, and skipping the 180-minute queue felt so good. The privilege of doing so cost us a whopping 2,400 yen per person, or roughly $15. And was it worth it? Yes, but with a massive asterisk. I cannot believe that there are people who willingly wait in the standby line for this Instagram glorified boat ride, because unless Tangled is your favorite movie, I would never ride this again because you're not going to be satisfied if you wait 180 minutes for something that is less than a minute in actuality. The experience is so short and the show scenes pass really quickly. And if you aren't lucky enough to be seated on the left side of the boat, your view of Rapunzel and Flynn being all lovey-dovey under the lanterns, which is the entire draw of this ride, will be obscured by other people in the boat. Because once you get to that festival room, due to how the track is laid out, the people on the left side are the only people that are going to be around the animatronic. So sure, you can see them from a distance on approach if you're in the front of the boat, and technically you can see them through the people. It's not like they don't exist. It's not like you're never gonna see her if there's someone to your left, but your view will be obstructed. And if you're not a big fan of this franchise, there's no reason, I think, to waste your money and your time on this specific ride. And this is where the day went downhill a little bit, because at this point in time, we were ready for lunch. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to eat under the sea at Sebastian's Calypso Cantina, where they had pizza? Oh, it's mobile and counter? Guess that means it's actually just mobile order, because the first place we went to I thought was both, but wasn't. So therefore, this place that says it's both must be only mobile. That was not true. But only having done mobile order at the Snuggly Duckling, where you had to scan a QR code, you could do it through the app, but they kept pointing us to the QR code. So my brain was like, oh, we have to get to the cantina to scan the QR code because we have to physically be there to put in the mobile order. We rushed over there and then we entered the land from the wrong side. And by the time that we got there, the mobile order slot for the time that we were physically standing at the location was booked out. And the only time that was available, like the next time that was available, was an hour later. So to make lemons out of lemonade, we put in our mobile order for the later time slot, and then we explored the undersea area. And I gotta say, even though we didn't get to experience the grandeur of the correct entrance, this area is spectacular. They have blowfish balloons, blowfish, jellyfish, Ariel, tweels. Speaking of the tweels, I wanted to take some pictures of them in Ariel's grotto, since there is a scale replica of it in the playground area, and I had seen some videos of it on Instagram. What I did not know is that they also have Ursula's sea monster, Mirror, and a tiny Jetsam and Flotsam. Upon seeing this area, I thought it would make a great location to take pictures of the plushies. However, everyone and their mothers had similar ideas. This picture was captured right before a rush of people who were taking pictures, mostly of themselves. There was not a lot of people with plushies, but one group just camped the mirror. There was like 10 people and they sat in front of the mirror for like 5 minutes. So, giving up, I wandered and tried to find Ariel's grotto, and it is really difficult to find. If you go, I would recommend looking at the floor and trying to find the starfish. Once you find the starfish, follow the starfish, and then you're going to get to the grotto, because the tunnel is really obscured to get to that area. But the starfish will lead you there. And then once you get there, it is really worth it because it is just so cool. This was the only picture I got of it without people, because almost immediately after I got there, it seems like people followed me in, and then there was just a flood of people. So the only clear area I could find for some quick tweel pics was this case of thingamabobs, so that is where they went. We also got to ride the blowfish before our mobile order was ready, and when we picked it up, we found a table and were caught off guard almost instantaneously. The star shape of the pizza is really cool. The hot dogs are hot dogs, but the sauce on the pizza was barbecue and not marinara. So the entire thing just tasted super sweet, and it was not the flavor profile I was expecting or wanted. Given how long we had waited because I misunderstood the ordering process because I never do mobile orders anywhere, and how crowded the restaurant was because it was like the peak of lunchtime, the entire experience was kind of a letdown. The theming was not as cool as I thought it would be either. It really reminded me of like the early 2000s Disney, which was kind of nostalgic, but not the best vibe considering how crowded it was and how subpar the pizza was. This, however, was the lowest point of the day, the worst of the worst. Everything was up from here. After lunch, it was time for the show, but we did not queue up early enough or in the right place. Shows, much like almost everything at this park, need to be queued up for in advance. There are some people that go to these parks specifically just to see the shows, and they will camp out in the same spot the entire day. The benefit to the Tokyo DisneySea main shows is that the mascots will be on a boat, and the boat will float around the harbor, so you can see it from other vantage points. You don't have to be where the stage areas are, but if you want to see the dancers and additional characters, you're gonna have to be in certain locations that will give you a better view. Because we were on the wrong side, we just took a little video of the boat, hung around for a couple of minutes, and then headed over to Aquatopia. Maybe the rest of the show would have been amazing, and maybe there was something spectacular that involved the boat that we didn't get to see, but at this point, my phone was also dying. So even if there was, I likely wouldn't have been able to capture any video of it, and as a result of this unfortunate but foreseeable and preventable occurrence, I have very little pictures from the rest of the day. I will say that there are battery banks on property that you can rent if your phone starts to die. However, these require you to scan a QR code, download an app, set up an account on that app, and then you can pay to unlock one of the phone banks. So, if your phone is already dead, these banks are meaningless. Therefore, I recommend you bring your own power bank to top off your devices, since you'll likely be using them more than you usually do, especially if you're doing the mobile orders and premiere passes. Now then, Aquatopia. This ride was mega cool. You get into bumper boat looking things, but you don't actually get to control them and bump into one another like I initially thought that you would. They're actually on a trackless track with various programmed routes, so you never really know where you're gonna go until you get on the boat. This was another one of my favorites, even though it was short and sweet, because it was so fun. And I am so distraught that it is permanently closing in September of this year. We were wondering why so many people were recording the ride, like everyone had their phones out. And I think it might have been due to this. If I had only known, I would have used the last bit of the juice on my phone to take a video of a ride, but alas. I'm glad that we came back later in the day to ride it again, though. It holds a very fond place in my heart. After our initial Aquatopia ride, we wandered around a bit more, going into the Aladdin area, riding Sinbad's Storybook Adventure, which was by far the longest ride we were on that day and had the shortest wait time of all of the rides in the park, and then picked up a little snack in the Journey area. This was the best thing we ate all day. A long, fluffy bun filled with savory gyoza filling, washed down with a limited edition mojito that was not called a mojito, but it absolutely was just a mojito that had a little bit of lime jelly in the bottom. I absolutely loved this snack. I would have eaten it for every single meal if I could have. It was so good. Plus, this quick service restaurant area is down below, right near the Nautilus, so you can take pictures with the submarine if you so desire there as well. After refueling, we circled back to Aquatopia to ride it again, and then we went on the Nemo ride since the queue finally calmed down, which was a great spontaneous decision. After our underwater adventure, it was finally time to try some popcorn. I now completely understand why the Popcorn Panic event exists and puts so much emphasis on popcorn and popcorn flavors, because every single cart in the park had a different popcorn flavor. You had caramel, soy sauce, milk chocolate, black pepper, garlic scallop, classic salt, garlic shrimp, and curry, which was the one that I ended up getting. Apparently, there are even more flavors at Tokyo Disney, like honey and corn potage. So, if you have food allergies, please be certain that the popcorn cart you are going to is not one with a flavor that contains your allergens. I almost bought the shrimp flavor because it smelled like garlic, and that would have been very bad. But each cart has the flavor written in both Japanese and English, and the app is very clear about what flavors are offered where to, so as long as you read, you'll be fine. After this light dinner, we made our way back to the harbor for the night show, which was run in B mode due to the high winds, and then we left the park, where we ended our day the same way that this whole spontaneous adventure started. Out on the patio, sipping a cold one while watching the monorail go by. I highly recommend visiting DisneySea, even as someone who doesn't care so much for the mouse, because the park is gorgeous, the rides are fun, and the vibe is super relaxed. The only downside to when we visited was that both Indiana Jones and Frozen were down for maintenance, so some of the other ride queues might have been a little bit longer than normal, and we couldn't ride either of those exciting attractions. But the day still felt full and oddly calming. We had downtime, which isn't typical for a park day like this, and we still got on all the rides that we were targeting, plus a couple extra. But the park is not without its pitfalls, the biggest of which is the overcrowding. There was a lot of people, and it was a random Tuesday. I cannot imagine what this park is like during peak times or during weekends. There are so many people, and that on the surface is not that big of a problem until it impacts every single aspect of the park, like it does. Because the queues are not just for attractions, they're also for gachapon, for games, for the bathroom, for food. Everything has a line, and the lines are very long. If we had not done the mobile ordering like we did, we easily would have waited 30 to 40 minutes just to get to the counter to order our food. So I highly recommend mobile ordering if the places that you want to eat at have it. Obviously, if you're going to go get popcorn or something like that, given that there's only one flavor at the carts, it moves really fast, even when there's a queue. So some things are going to be fine to wait in line for. Other things you're going to want to try to optimize as best you can. So that way you have more time to spend in queues for rides or in queues for shows. Things that you really want to see because it might be your only time there. Similarly, there is a lot of chatter about the app. Some people find it really easy to use. Some people think it's atrocious. I personally found it super easy to use, but it does chew up some of your battery. And the only gripe that I really had with it is that the restaurant finder is ridiculous. It would geo-lock you to the land or the area that you were in, and it was really difficult to get it to show you options that were outside of your immediate area. And then when you did, if you tried to go back, it would just start you at the top of the list again, and it was very frustrating to try to find the gyoza bun that I wanted to eat. So instead, what I would recommend is having a browser tab open that has the restaurants for the park that you are visiting. So that way you can easily search through there and you don't have to deal with all of the annoying resets of the search. The only way to get and then use your Premier passes is through the mobile app. Unless you're staying on property, apparently, because then you get little tickets. So if you're not staying on property, the mobile app's going to be the way that you use those things and that you book those things. But that was kind of it, though. The overcrowding is a big issue and it will impact what you want to do, so you just have to plan around it. And then the restaurant searching was just annoying. I wish that I had opened up the web browser sooner. Everything else that day was fine. I had no gripes about the fast pass system. I had no gripes about the language barrier. Nothing else really seems to be that much of a deal breaker to me. And everything that we did and ate and saw was just fantastic. So I think as long as you are planning around the crowds, you're going to be fine. If you can manage that, then you're going to have a wonderful park day, either here or at Tokyo Disney, where the Alice in Wonderland land is for any of you Heartsville aficionados. But me and my Octavanel heart were satisfied with the sea, and maybe, just maybe, I'll go back someday. Thank you so much for coming on this little journey with me and sticking it out to the end of the video. Please let me know if you enjoyed this little mini vlog. If you have ever been to the park, do you want to go someday? What was your favorite attraction, or what are you looking most forward to? Let me know all of your thoughts on that down below. But if comments aren't your thing, you could always like and subscribe instead to show your support. And before you go, I just have to remind you that you're amazing, and I hope you have a wonderful day.